I love the challenge of a new pattern. This pattern came out just a few days ago on the Steve Good's website. If you're not already familiar with it, I'll give you a link in the description. Steve publishes one pattern a day. I liked it. I want to make it Be Happy. And the bee is a dark color. The happy is a contrasting lighter color. And then there's a backer behind that. So I'm making the bee out of sapele. It's a nice dark rich brown. The middle layer that's right behind the bee that says happy, I'm making out of oak. And the third layer is also sapele. I'm making that out of the third layer is sapele, making it out of that. All three layers, 1/4 inch thick material. The material is cut. I've got the patterns cut and attached to the material. There's different ways of attaching patterns to material. I'm not going to go into that. I have a video on it with, I believe it was 9 methods of attaching patterns to wood that I show in the video. I'll link that so you can watch it if you haven't already. I'm using scroll saw tape. It's my favorite method. You just roll it on. It's a double-sided tape. You roll it onto the wood, peel off the backer, put on the pattern, and you're ready to go. It holds the pattern on nicely while you're cutting, but when you're done, it peels off, usually in one piece. I used my drill press to make the pilot holes for the inside cuts on the bees. I believe I counted 8 of them. You should always make the inside cuts first. It usually doesn't matter in what order you cut them, but they should be made before the outside cut. The reason for this is that these cuts can weaken the wood considerably, but leaving the outside until last gives a strong frame you can use to hold the piece every time you have to maneuver it over the pilot holes to thread the blade through for the next cut. It would be a horrible thing to have the workpiece break while you are handling it, potentially ruining all the work you've done so far. My go-to scroll saw blades are the Pegasus Modified Geometry series, and for 1/4 inch material, I use a number 3 blade. I'll leave a link to my video on choosing the correct size scroll saw blade in case you're new to scroll sawing and not sure how to choose the correct blade. You may need to adjust my rules of thumb to fit your ways of working, but they can at least provide a starting place. The accent lines on the bee's wings have some sharp points at the ends that will take a little skill to make as drawn. The way I did this was to cut from the pilot hole to one of the lines and then follow it to the point. If I made a turn from there, the point would be more like a curve. So when I got to the point, I backed the blade up to the pilot hole, and then I cut down the line on the other side until I reached the point again. Now, since I had cut into the point from 2 separate directions, the point was nice and sharp. Next, I backed up to the pilot hole again, and the waste piece from the cuts I had just made was pulled out on a blade upstroke. I now had a large area in which to maneuver the blade to make a cut down one of the sides of the point on the other side. Once again, I cut to the point, backed up to the starting place, and then cut down the second side until I reached the point. I had a sharp point on this side as well because of the ways I had approached the cuts. I'm using a lighted magnifier, which is not a necessity, but it is a useful accessory, especially on patterns with many small cuts. I'm currently not using the light because even on the lowest setting, it tends to wash out the details on the video. The bee's eye has 2 sharp points, but I didn't want to back up all the way to the pilot hole. Instead, I reversed a little distance to the waist area and made a blade turn there to take me back to the corner. Using the waist area to return the blade to where you want to go is an option available on all but the smallest cuts. The 4 cuts for the stripes of the bee's back require a different technique than the very sharp points we already cut. The top stripe has 90-degree corners, and doing these well is an important scroll sawing skill. As always, you start at the pilot hole and cut to one of the corners. But rather than backing up to the pilot hole or making the turn in the waste material, I find it works best to back off pressure on the blade slightly once you've reached the corner. Now the blade is not cutting, and you can pivot the workpiece 90 degrees so it's facing in the next direction you want to cut. Put pressure back on the blade and feed the workpiece into the blade until you reach the next corner. Then you repeat the process at each remaining corner. Some of the corners in this section are rounded, so when you do them, you just have to keep following the line around the perimeter. There's no need to take pressure off the blade to make the turns. The outside or external cut is a combination of points, curves, and 90-degree turns. So cutting it is a great skill building exercise. You choose from the different techniques and use them as needed as you approach each intersection. After completing the cut, I removed the scroll saw tape that was holding the pattern to the wood during cutting. It came off in just a couple of pieces. You have to be careful with this step because the wood is only 1/4 inch thick, and there are places like the legs that could snap off if you get careless. This is a great beginner project. It involves all the skills you need to become good at the craft of scroll sawing, but on a scale that is not so great as to be intimidating to a newbie. The bee's body contained a number of inside cuts with varying degrees of skill needed to cut them accurately. The middle layer, spelling out the word happy, continues with some interior cuts. I find myself making a good number of scroll saw projects that contain letters, so I feel learning to cut the alphabet correctly is a needed skill. The body of the bee contained a number of 90-degree corners, but if the cuts were somewhat rounded, they would still likely look okay. That is not the case with letters. They are instantly recognizable as such, so the corners need to be crisp, or else they will give the impression of overall sloppy work. The letters on this project are huge compared to what you'll come across on other designs. So, once again, take advantage of this as a skill building task. I've already described how to make 90-degree turns, so I'll briefly review. Start at the pilot hole, cut to a corner, then back off pressure on the blade slightly. Pivot the workpiece 90 degrees, then start cutting again, and repeat the procedure at each intersection. For letters, I take an extra precaution. For most cuts, I keep the blade right on the line. However, if I should happen to stray a little bit over the line on letters, like the A or the two P's here, that middle part of the letter can break off and ruin the letter. It might even destroy the look of the project. So with letters, I cut inside the lines to avoid the possibility of ruining any letters. Cutting the letter A is a place where you want to be extra cautious. As I already mentioned, this letter is larger than most I cut in scroll saw panels, but I still slowed down on this part of the cuts. I have years of experience doing this, but if you are new to the scroll saw and have a machine with variable speed, you might want to slow down the blade. At slower speeds, the blade cuts less aggressively, and this gives you better control of the blade. You want to pay very close attention to the little bar in the middle of the A. This design used a stencil font to keep the middle part of the A and the P's from falling out. So when you get to the part of the A, you want to make sure to stay inside the cut line. That will give you a small extra margin of safety while you're cutting. The two P's each require two cuts. The upright part of the letter is nothing more than a rectangle, so it is cut using the standard procedure for cutting 90-degree turns. But once again, you should stay on the inside of the lines to leave enough material in between that cut and the next. For the upper right side of the P's, exercise caution to stay inside the lines, and these two letters will turn out fine. Sharp, crisp cuts make the difference between a mediocre and top-level results. I'm going to do the glue up in two stages. The reason for this is that when glue is first applied, the surfaces it is applied to are very slippery. They can easily move and slip out of alignment. I overcome this by applying the glue and then letting it start to dry for just a few minutes before putting the pieces together. After that short time, the pieces don't move as much, so it is easier to apply clamping pressure. I was very careful when I located the bee on top of the middle layer. I only applied glue to the back of the bee, none to the middle layer, because of all the cutouts on the bee's body. I will be using a spray polyurethane finish on this, and I don't want to get glue on any area where it is not needed because the finish will not stick to the glue. This was a difficult shape to hold with clamps, so I used an alternate method. I placed a piece of plywood on top of my workbench, then placed the workpiece on top of that, and then I added some MDF above that. I added some weight in the form of a gallon glue bottle to the very top, and that sandwich will apply evenly distributed pressure across the workpiece while the glue dries. I was in no hurry to finish this, so I glued the bee to the layer that says happy as the first stage. When the glue dried, I took that assembly, glued it to the bottom layer, and repeated the process. I've already mentioned that I think this is a great beginner project, but I enjoyed making it enough that I can safely say even someone with scroll saw experience will find it a satisfying venture. You can easily make this in a weekend. It will make a great decoration for your home or office and a perfect gift item as well. Please give me a thumbs up if you liked the video, and I will respond to any comments. A suggestion for the next video to watch should be on the screen right now, and I'll see you there.